It was one of those mornings that seemed ordinary at first, the kind of day that slips past you almost unnoticed, until a single word or action shifts everything. I had been looking forward to our anniversary for weeks, planning in the back of my mind how I would surprise her, how her eyes would light up when she saw the little things I had prepared. Even the smallest details mattered to me: her favorite flowers, a handwritten note tucked neatly into a gift bag, the way I had rehearsed my words so that they felt spontaneous yet heartfelt. I imagined her smile over and over, the subtle warmth in her gaze, the way she would laugh at a joke only I knew would crack her up. And yet, that morning, I felt a slight tension in the air, like the quiet before a sudden gust of wind. We were sitting at the small breakfast table in our apartment, the sunlight spilling across the wooden floorboards, a golden sheen illuminating the chaos of mugs and crumbs from the hurried morning routine. She sipped her coffee without looking at me, scrolling through her phone, a habitual frown knitting her brow. I thought perhaps she was tired, or distracted, or maybe just deep in her own world, and I didn't want to bother her. But then she spoke, casually, almost flippantly. "I can't go tonight. I'm going out with my friends. Let's celebrate another day." For a moment, the words didn't register. I blinked, the coffee halfway to my lips, frozen mid-motion. My mind spun for just a second, struggling to process what I had just heard. Tonight was supposed to be special. We had been counting down to it, talking about it, imagining it as this perfect, intimate celebration just for us. And now, with a few simple words, she was brushing it aside. My first instinct was disappointment, prickly, sinking feeling in my chest that was part shock, part hurt, part something I couldn't quite name. But then I caught myself. I realized that any reaction I had could escalate the situation or dissipate it, depending on my choice. So I smiled, the calmest I could muster, and said, "Okay, that's fine." She didn't look up, didn't meet my eyes. She just shrugged and muttered something about getting ready, and in that instant I felt an odd mix of relief and resolve. Relief because I didn't have to argue or plead or make her feel guilty. Resolve because I suddenly realized that this was my moment to do something different, something unexpected. The disappointment that had clawed at me began to shift, to transform into a quiet, almost mischievous determination. I thought about her best friend, someone who had always been kind to me, someone who had welcomed me into her life and treated me like family even when the relationship between my girlfriend and I had its own rough edges. Her laughter was genuine, her presence comforting, and I realized that she had always deserved recognition, appreciation, and perhaps a small gesture of acknowledgement that went unnoticed in the whirlwind of our own romantic drama. So, I started planning, not for my girlfriend, but for her. The very gift I had prepared with all the intention of delighting my girlfriend now felt like it belonged elsewhere. I could see the look on her face, a mixture of surprise, happiness, and warmth, the kind of reaction that made the effort of preparation worthwhile. And as I imagined filming her response, capturing that unguarded, heartfelt moment, I felt a spark of excitement I hadn't realized I was capable of feeling that morning. By the time evening rolled around, I was ready. The gift was carefully wrapped, each ribbon tied with precision, each detail attended to as if it were a sacred ritual. I rehearsed my words silently, practicing that perfect balance of casual and meaningful, the way I wanted her reaction to feel natural yet unforgettable. There was a thrill in the secrecy, a sense of doing something quietly revolutionary, not out of spite, but out of a desire to recognize goodness where it truly existed. When I arrived at her apartment, I was careful to maintain the facade of casualness. I knocked lightly, trying not to give away the anticipation bubbling under my calm exterior. She opened the door with that familiar warmth, her eyes widening slightly as she saw me standing there with the gift. "Hey," I said, smiling. "Thought you might like something." Her confusion quickly gave way to delight. She laughed softly, touched by the thoughtfulness I had shown, her hands trembling slightly as she untied the ribbons and revealed the gift inside. And in that moment, everything shifted. Her gratitude was genuine, her smile radiant, and the simple act of giving had created a bond, a memory that was unexpectedly profound. I felt an unfamiliar pride swell in my chest, not for myself, but for the chance to brighten someone's day in a way that truly mattered. Little did I know, this small, quiet gesture would take on a life of its own, reaching far beyond the confines of that modest apartment, beyond the intentions I had carefully nurtured, and far into a world I could never have predicted. After giving her the gift, I quickly set up my phone to capture her reaction on video. I wanted it to feel natural, authentic, not staged or forced, so I positioned it subtly in the corner of the room, angled just right to catch the moment without intruding. As soon as she unwrapped the package, her eyes widened in genuine surprise, and for a brief second, she seemed almost frozen, completely absorbed in the act of discovery. Then, slowly, her hands reached for the gift, her fingers tracing the edges as if memorizing every detail, and a soft, delighted laugh escaped her lips. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered, almost in disbelief, her voice trembling slightly. There was a warmth in her tone, an honest appreciation that made the corners of my heart lift. I nodded, smiling. "I wanted to," I said simply, trying not to betray the quiet glee I felt inside. As the moments unfolded, she began talking to me about how thoughtful it was, how much it meant to her that I had remembered something so small yet meaningful. Her words were soft but sincere, like a melody I could listen to over and over again. I kept the camera rolling, capturing each blink, each slight smile, each moment of pure, unguarded joy. It wasn't about creating content for the sake of likes or views. It was about preserving a moment of human connection, something rare in a world that often felt impatient and distracted. Once the initial excitement settled, we laughed together, shared small anecdotes, and talked about the kind of memories that only years of friendship could build. The conversation felt effortless, like two people speaking a language that had been cultivated over countless shared experiences, inside jokes, and quiet moments of support. I realized, in a subtle way, that this bond had always been present, waiting quietly in the background while the world around us demanded attention and recognition. When I finally uploaded the video, I didn't expect much. Perhaps a handful of friends might see it. Perhaps a few strangers online might resonate with the authenticity of her reaction. I titled it simply, something like Unexpected Anniversary Surprise, and pressed share, letting it flow into the vast digital universe with no further thought. Within hours, notifications began to pour in. Views multiplied rapidly, likes, comments, shares. It seemed as if the world couldn't get enough of that small, sincere moment. People resonated with the authenticity, the joy, the uncalculated kindness I had captured. Strangers wrote messages expressing how touched they were, how it reminded them of someone in their own life who deserved recognition, who had quietly been a source of goodness and support. Amid the digital storm, I could hardly believe what was happening. Something intended as a personal gesture had somehow become a shared experience across thousands of screens, thousands of hearts. And while the numbers climbed and the video continued to spread, a subtle shift began to occur in my own emotions. I felt a mix of pride, awe, and a strange, vindicated satisfaction, not from revenge, but from the validation of recognizing someone truly worthy of appreciation. Then came the unexpected part. My girlfriend saw the video. I had anticipated a range of reactions: surprise, amusement, perhaps mild irritation. But nothing could have prepared me for the intensity of the moment when she realized that she had been overshadowed, even if unintentionally. Her initial glance at the screen showed curiosity, then confusion, then a dawning realization. And in that brief sequence, I saw emotions flicker across her face: disbelief, a tinge of embarrassment, a subtle sting of regret. The dynamic between us shifted immediately. It wasn't confrontation yet, but there was a tension, a silent acknowledgement that something had changed. In the comments, people celebrated her best friend's reaction, not mine, not hers. The focus had moved, naturally, away from the person who had dismissed the anniversary, and onto someone whose kindness had never faltered. She didn't speak much at first. I didn't push. Instead, I let the moment linger, allowed her to process the layers of emotion that were undoubtedly swirling inside. I continued interacting with the best friend, responding to messages of congratulations, sharing small laughs about the unexpected viral fame, and through it all, I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that genuine appreciation had been recognized, amplified, and celebrated. There was an unspoken lesson embedded in every like, share, and comment. Kindness, authenticity, and thoughtful gestures could resonate in ways that calculated expectations never could. And in the heart of that lesson was a revelation. Relationships were defined not only by romantic gestures, but by the quiet bonds of respect, trust, and unassuming generosity that often went unnoticed until they were highlighted in the simplest of ways. As the hours passed, the video continued to spread like wildfire. Notifications became a constant hum, a digital echo of the human connection I had captured. Strangers reached out to share stories of their own, tales of friendships, surprises, and the kind of quiet love that doesn't always make headlines. And while my girlfriend's presence lingered in the background, her absence that night, her casual dismissal of our anniversary, had inadvertently created a space for someone else's light to shine a light that the world, in its vast digital expanse, was suddenly celebrating. The next morning, the tension was palpable before any words were spoken. I could see it in her eyes, the mixture of frustration and realization, the quiet storm brewing just beneath the surface. She had scrolled through her notifications, glimpsed the barrage of comments, shares, and reactions, and finally understood that the evening had taken an unexpected turn. I watched her struggle to form words, the usual casual confidence replaced by a hesitancy I had never seen before. I saw the video, she said finally, her voice low, measured. There was an edge to it, a subtle tremor that revealed her vulnerability. You gave it to her. I nodded. I did. I thought it was time someone who's always been kind got recognized. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and I could sense the internal conflict: embarrassment, surprise, perhaps even a hint of jealousy, though she would never admit it outright. But in that quiet exchange, I realized something fundamental. The value of a gesture is never diminished by the intentions of others, but it can illuminate truths that people have overlooked. And perhaps tonight, some truths were now impossible to ignore. She sank into the couch, pulling her knees close to her chest. I didn't expect. Her words trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. I didn't interrupt. There was no need to explain, to justify, or to defend. The moment had spoken for itself. The reactions, the video, the joy in her best friend's eyes, they all conveyed the narrative more powerfully than I ever could with words. I sipped my coffee, casually watching her wrestle with her feelings. I didn't gloat. I simply let the space exist, allowing her to process the consequences of a choice that had seemed trivial the day before but now carried a weight of emotional gravity. And yet, amid the tension, there was a strange beauty in the unfolding drama. It was raw, human, an undeniably real cinematic tableau of the kind that rarely manifests in everyday life. Over the following days, the viral video continued its journey across social media. Each new comment reinforced the pattern. Admiration for the best friend, appreciation for her authentic reaction, and a quiet acknowledgement of the thoughtfulness that had gone unnoticed for so long. People were moved, inspired even, by a simple act of kindness amplified by the world's unrelenting curiosity. And as I observed this digital ripple, I began to reflect on the deeper meaning behind it all. Life, I realized, had a way of rewarding those who acted from the heart, often in ways that defied expectation. Our relationships are defined not by grand gestures alone, but by the quiet, consistent acts of attention, care, and respect that go largely unnoticed until something shifts the perspective. In this case, the shift had been abrupt, almost poetica, cancelled anniversary, a redirected gift, and the sudden global appreciation of genuine emotion. Eventually, my girlfriend began to speak more openly, attempting to reconcile her feelings with the reality of what had occurred. There were apologies, hesitant at first, then more sincere as the initial sting faded. But the dynamic had changed irrevocably. I could see her thinking, reconsidering past actions, and perhaps, just perhaps, gaining a deeper understanding of what it meant to acknowledge and cherish those who have always been present, the best friend. Meanwhile, was overwhelmed with messages of congratulations, inquiries, and offers to meet new people who had been inspired by her reaction. We spent time together, laughing over the absurdity of sudden internet fame, marveling at the unpredictability of life, and quietly acknowledging that kindness had a way of finding its audience, even in the most unexpected circumstances. And through it all, I realized that the power of an act like this isn't in the recognition it brings to oneself, but in the joy it sparks in another. Watching someone's face light up in genuine surprise, knowing that a simple gesture had created a memory they would treasure forever that was far more satisfying than any acknowledgement I could receive. The viral attention was merely a byproduct, a digital echo of an authentic human moment. By the time our next anniversary approached, the atmosphere between my girlfriend and me had shifted. We had conversations that were more honest, moments that were more thoughtful, and gestures that were more meaningful. And while the memory of that cancelled night lingered, it no longer carried the sting of disappointment. Instead, it reminded us both of the power of choice, the impact of consideration, and the beauty of lifting someone else into the spotlight when it is deserved. In the end, the experience was a revelation, a lesson, and a story worth remembering, not because of viral fame, not because of any rivalry or resentment, but because it highlighted the extraordinary in the ordinary, the genuine in the overlooked, and the profound impact of treating others with kindness when the world isn't watching.